This video here isn't really going to be so much of a post-fight review of Richardson Hitchens versus Gustavo Lemos. It's more going to be me giving my 2 cents on the topic of officiating. Because obviously last night in the wee hours of Sunday morning, last night in America, Richardson Hitchens won a unanimous decision over Gustavo Lemos. Now, woke up this morning, watched the fight, saw people were online were saying it was a robbery, this, that, and the third, and that word gets thrown around a lot. It gets thrown around a lot, and a lot of the times in fights that are close, that are competitive, you might think one guy got it, the other guy gets it, and straight away the word robbery comes out, and this, that, and the third. And a lot of the times, a close, genuine, competitive fight that really could go either way, it's not a robbery. What I would define a robbery is when one fighter has clearly won the fight. I mean, there's no ifs or buts. That fighter has won, and the other fighter gets the decision, and sometimes actually gets it wide. When they've maybe won at best 3 rounds the whole fight, they've got it by a comfortable margin. I would interpret that as a robbery. A genuine close fight that you could look at, you could say, could have went either way, but realistically, this guy really did win it. But depends on what you like. I could make a case for other fighter winning it. Yeah, that's a close fight. Go either way. Now, this fight, I would say, falls into the category of close fight, but for me, Gustavo Lemos was the right winner. He was the winner. I wouldn't have given it to him by a country mile. It wasn't a 8-4, 9-3 type fight, but he, for me, won this fight. I wouldn't have had an issue with a draw. When I looked at what Hitchison was doing, he was moving a lot, and someone would say it was excessive, and he wasn't really doing anything with it. All right, and the holding was excessive. The referee really should have had words with him over that. So I can see why a lot of people didn't score the fight for him, and they would have given it to Gustavo Lemos just on activity more so than anything else. I can talk about that more in review of the week. What I really want to talk about is the scorecards. Now, 2 scorecards of 115, 113 for Richardson Hitchens. I don't feel he did enough to win the fight, but they are very close scorecards. And if there had been, a point deduction, or maybe there was a swing round, it could have been very different. Again, this just seems to happen and happen and happen, whether it be with a referee or whether it be with judging. Something completely crazy happens. This time it's a scorecard. 117, 111. I don't know. I honestly don't know how you can watch a fight like this and come to that conclusion. And do you know what, right? So often we see this with some of these scorecards, and we're always told, we're trying to be, given this narrative that, boxing judging is very difficult. It's very subjective. It's not that subjective. And if it is subjective, right, if it is a real case of a judge maybe likes a particular style, or, it's subjective in that regard, would you not see a more even split on who gets the nod? Because it seems like it's always the house fighter. And then we're always given this narrative of it's subjective. Well, if that was the case, would it not be a bit of more of an even-Steven split? Would we not see the away fighter get it the odd time? Because it seems like 90-95% of the time it's the house fighter. And, in America, people say in America it seems a problem, but realistically it's a bigger issue than just America. I often say when you see somebody's scorecards, even if sometimes the right guy does get the nod, you scratch your head because you're just like, how? How have you come to this conclusion? And 170, 111 is just absolutely ridiculous. How a judge could look at that fight and view that as a 170, 111 scorecard, I will never know. And we look at you would say, like, oh, it's Eddie Hearn, it's this. No, it's a wider issue than that, because it happens on other promoter shows as well. A fight that I believe genuinely was close was Devin Haney versus Vasily Lomachenko last year. I felt Lomachenko did enough to win, but I don't have much of an issue with Haney getting it. I believe it was round number 10 where Lomachenko stunned Haney and really dominated that round. And I believe one judge scored that round to Devin Haney. Now, how in God's name you could give a round like that to Devin Haney is beyond me. In a round where one guy is dominating so much that you can't even argue. You couldn't make you couldn't make any case for Haney winning round 10. I believe that was the round. And somehow a judge has scored it for him. What? You look at Rolly Romero versus Ismael Barroso. Ismael Barroso winning the fight had Rolly down. and we get an absolutely farcical stoppage. And again, it's the home fighter. And Devin Haney, although he's now back with the zone, he and Bob Arum Lombo was with Top Rank longer. Haney was the guy they had there, he's got the longevity, they want to work with him. So Haney really was the house fighter. The house fighter gets around, he just under no circumstance wins. A fighter who's being, battered from pillar to post and had been down in the fight gets a premature stoppage and is awarded a title. And people say, oh, it's subjective, it's a difficult job. Well, it looks pretty damn, smoke and gun. It's always the house fighter. If it was just incompetence or it was just, with scoring, it was just subjective, would we not see a scenario where it happens to the away fighter? You go and look at the UK, Howard Foster, he loves his early stoppages when it's the away fighter, because you look at George Groves in the first fight with Carl Froch, he stopped that fight prematurely. Carl Froch was hurt way worse in that first round than George Groves was in that ninth round. And you look at the way he just, world title fight stopped, right? Fast forward 7 years later, 6-7 years later, I think it was 7 years later, 2021, and Howard Foster was refereeing Josh Warrington versus Mauricio Lara, the first fight. Now in that fight, bear in mind, that fight was a non-title fight, there was no title on the line, no world title anyway. And Josh Warrington gets dropped, I think it was in round 4, round 5, correct me, it was one of those rounds, gets dropped very heavily and very badly by Mauricio Lara. And by the end of that round, you really could make the argument the corner needed to pull Josh Warrington out. But after he got dropped very heavily, Howard Foster didn't stop the fight. Josh Warrington was getting absolutely, the punches he was taking, he had loads of opportunities to jump in and stop it. Let's it carry on. House fighter. Now, he stopped George Groves in a world title fight where George Groves hadn't even touched the deck. Wasn't in anywhere near as much trouble. But, Howard Foster, who was known for early stoppages, he's done it loads of times. That one time, he's like, no, carry on. Just, why not? You look at, was it Miguel Vasquez versus Lewis Ritson. I think that was in 2020, I think it was, and I was behind closed doors. I believe that was an easy win for Vasquez. Easy win. Gave it to Lewis Ritson. Remember when O'Hara Davis fought him on an MTK show? That was on YouTube. Might still be on IFL's UJ. They might have taken that down, actually, but you probably still find it. 10-rounder, Ian John Lewis, I believe, was a scoring referee that night. Everyone knew who won the fight. Vasquez won it. O'Hara Davis even knew Vasquez won it, but everyone knew O'Hara Davis is getting it. It's almost gone to the point now where when we watch a fight and an away fighter comes in, or, maybe the underdog, maybe they are kind of even Steven, but one fighter is an underdog, you're just looking at that and you're like, he's not going to get it. It's actually crazy that we can watch a fight and think like that, where you're like, he's not going to get it. You know that. And that to me is not incompetence. That to me is not someone being subjective in their scoring. That's something else. Boxing officials, right? They need to, I don't even know how you would even say it, but I think Teddy Atlas said it, that boxing is the only sport where you can have officials eating at the same table as the promoter the night before. What? That is, what? Madness. Absolute madness. There needs to be something done. I've always said that what I would like to see when we see a really, now they have done it in the past. I know HBO did it back in the day on a couple of shows where they interviewed Richard Steele when he stopped the Taylor Chavez fight. They need to get these officials and have them explain, and whether it's on air or whether it's off air, we need to be able to see the transcript at the very least. But how I would go about fixing judging and how this will be, because again, I want to point out, it's not just an issue with a specific promoter, it's not just an issue in a specific country. You go and look at Spain on some of those shows that Kerman Lejaraga was fighting on, and you see the absolute nonsense that was going on. I mean, you want to just see corruption, just go look at some of those fights. What was it when he fought Jazza Smith? Just go back, that fight was a farce. That was a farce. I'm sure it's on YouTube, you can look at it, it's a farce. What was going on in that fight? It was just mental. And, that's not incompetence as far as I'm concerned. Something really needs to be done. And I don't know how you do it. I really don't. In terms of judging, how we stop scorecards like 170 111 happening, I would make the argument that you would get a judge to explain it. before a commission, before the sanctioning body, before someone, and say, right, this is your scorecard. Can you explain how you arrived at that? Regardless of the fact. And I don't mean for like a bad score. I mean, regardless. I mean, if you're watching a fight and it's a clear 121.08 to fighter A, if it's a 121.08 across the board, no one disputes it, they should still just explain rationale behind the scoring, please. Because, keep it fair. Do it for everyone. But there should be a transcript of it that you can view and you can see where the judge saw this and I could make a case for that, or he said this. When I look at it, maybe. They need to do it for all fights, because I think that if the judges and referees are scrutinised, which they really aren't, quite frankly, unless they do a CJ Ross, like they did against Canelo with Mayweather, unless they do a CJ Ross, they're not really, scrutinised, or an Adelaide Bird, nothing really happens. And I think that's wrong. I think that if you're incompetent at your job and you're doing a bad job, you should be put on blast. You should at the very least explain yourself, and that should be made public. So when Rob Tebert, and I'm forgetting which judge it was now, can't remember which judge it was, but it was after the Joshua Usyk fight, where that was a clear win for Alexander Usyk. It was more competitive in the first fight, but it was a clear win for Alexander Usyk. A judge scored it for Anthony Joshua. And you're like, I couldn't find 7 rounds to give to him. I couldn't even find 5 rounds to give to him, much less 7. And he was trying to, get the judge. I can't remember the judge it was. But you could see it was like, like a politician, just, get away. When, the mainstream media go off script and they ask a politician the question they don't want to ask, you get that face of just like, what are you asking me that for? When they know they effed up, but, trying to keep face. That's what it's like. I think that needs to be what happens. They need to be held accountable, I think, because Richardson Hitchens, I'm not having a go with him. He wasn't the one scoring it. He wasn't the one judging it. But he, as far as I'm concerned, he didn't win the fight. He should have been pulled up on the holding. And Gustavo Lemos won this fight. And not only will he not get the nod, for a judge to go and score it like that, that's downright disrespectful. Because that makes it look on paper that, oh, God, he was schooled. He wasn't really in this. He only won 3 rounds. He wasn't in this fight. When actually you watch it and you're like, you make a very good case that he won the fight. In fact, most people would say he did win the fight, and you get a scorecard like that. Ridiculous. What do you do about it? I don't know. I really don't know. All I can say is that is what I would maybe start with, would be getting the judge to explain it, and likewise a referee if he makes a very, very silly decision. Or likewise, as in like premature stoppage, or he lets a fighter take a Hail Mary beating, which he doesn't need to take, then I'd be also having words with him over that. But I really don't know. And, as I said, it seems 9 times out of 10, it's always the home fighter. And there's an example, you're talking about a Matchroom show, you go into a Top Rank show, you look at some of the scorecards on those Queensbury shows, you look at Josh Taylor versus Jack Cattrall, that was on a Boxer Top Rank show. You see examples of this throughout. You go back in the day in Germany, on those Sauerland shows. I'm sure it still happens now in Germany, but it's not the kind of the force it was a decade ago. You'd go over there and you'd see Arthur Abraham, Andy Murray, Martin Murray, the first fight. A lot of people felt Martin Murray did enough to win. I think they had a very wide to Arthur Abraham. You're just like, what? How? And again, it's always the home fighter. How do you fix that? I don't know. I would scrutinise the judges and scrutinise the officials a lot more. Because if they know they're under scrutiny, if they know they are actually being looked at, and they're actually, commissions, sanctioning bodies are saying, right, we're keeping an eye on you, don't F up. It gives them more incentive to actually, really, go a little bit more forensic and say, right, let's look at this fairly and objectively, and let's properly, because I don't want to be in a position where, I'm not working big fights or I'm getting downgraded or something like that. I think a lot of it is not even to do with the promoters. I think the fact that if you're a judge and you're making money and you're getting paid, would you rather judge a Matchroom show? Would you rather judge a Top Rank show than judge, a small independent promotion who are running the show maybe once every 3-4 months, and you're almost doing it out of the kindness of your heart because you're not going to make much money from it. I think a lot of it is not even the fact that it has anything to do with the promoters being corrupt. I think it's to do with the fact that these judges are like, hey Eddie, hey Frank, hey Bob, hey Al, look what I did. Aren't I good? Can I have another shot? Can I come back next fight? Can you have me back next fight? Oh, you can? Yeah, yeah. You see what I did there? See what I did there? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. I wouldn't even rule that out. Seriously. But I'll talk more about the fight in its entirety on Review of the Week. But that, it's just something I needed to get off the chest. Because it's just, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Hope you enjoyed it, people. Smash the like button if you could, and subscribe if you haven't already. Peace.